All right, it is 6 o'clock, July the 15th. Can we be quiet, please?
Talking about important business. Go.
We have to put some humor in, okay? All right, it is 6 o'clock still, July the 15th, 2019. Time to call the city council meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Evans? Mr. Austin?
Here.
Mr. Blankenship?
Here.
Mr. Eggers?
Here.
Mr. Hupin?
Here.
Mr. Richards?
Here.
Mr. Wertz?
Here.
Sir, you have it down.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Waters, can you do the prayer and pledge?
Let's bow our heads. Father, be with our city council, mayor, and our attorney and clerk treasurer as we conduct the business for our constituents. Be with the police and fire departments as our first responders for the safety, and all of our city employees who provide Franklin with the many services, making Franklin the destination. Be with our fantastic city and county as we celebrate fairly and hopefully a little rain. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Thank everyone for being here at the city council meeting. Did we have any announcements, presentations, public comment? I see nothing new to.
Yeah, public comment. I just want to.
Sir,
Sir, can you come up?
Sure.
That way she can pick up more. The minutes are after.
Yeah, that's fine. Thought I was on the agenda, didn't see it, so I just jumped in. So. I'd like to propose
Sir, could you introduce yourself for the record since she has that?
Scott Lamarno.
Thank you.
I would like to propose a four-way stop at the corner of Jefferson and Hall. I know that we used to have a stop sign there, stoplight there actually. I know there was a traffic study done, but I just want to make that proposal. I know that it's dangerous. Actually brought some pictures for you guys to take a look at. You can't really make a left-hand turn. It's blinded because there's parking all the way along. And then there's Dr. Records old office with a big gate. You can't see around it. And on the other side, it's just as bad. And the only stoplight is from Water to Forsyth. So it's almost like a drag strip through there. We just moved recently into 216 East Jefferson, so we witnessed it at firsthand. Just how bad it is. And we're concerned too with the foot traffic that we have now as well. It seems like the weekends we get a lot more foot traffic through downtown. So just wanted to make the proposal. Guys, please take a look at it. I know that the police department's looked at it and see what you think. I do have some pictures if you guys would like them to show you how it's an obstructed view.
Scott?
Yep.
I know you asked me about this about 3 weeks ago, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. I thought I told you you need to get on the Board of Works agenda. That is the one.
I have an email where I sent it.
Yeah, instead it was confirmed and we didn't get on the agenda, so
The Board of Works or City Council?
either one. So
It's
it's
got to be on the Board of Works. That's who I speak for.
But I think it is very important that the council hear your concern anyway, so
Okay.
I appreciate that. And we do have enough time here, if you don't mind, just to show everybody the
Sure.
pictures you're talking about. And then, so the next meeting, you do need to get on the Board of Works agenda, okay?
So I need to send in another form then? Because I already sent in one and it got approved.
Kathy Kirkland.
It must have been when you were on vacation.
July 1st, I sent it to her and I apologize.
So if you've already sent it, we will honor that and get on the Board of Works the next meeting.
Okay.
And you know that date.
Well,
Yeah,
it's going to be August 5th.
August 5th, it'll be on the Board of Works, and that's at 5 o'clock. But pass the picture down, I want the council to
Yeah.
get involved.
Okay, appreciate it.
And I'll be hearing their opinion, come back to the Board of Works too.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, as we pass the pictures around, down First Watch, we'll go on with the rest of our meeting.
Sir.
Yes.
I just had one other item for the announcements. I was hoping to get your approval. We have you have a city council appointment to the Franklin Development Corporation. Amy Richardson has served in that capacity for the last 3-year term. I had originally thought her term expired at the end of August. I thought we had 4 that expired at the end of August this year for the 7 board members. 2 of those actually expire at the end of July. One is on the redevelopment commission meeting agenda for tomorrow morning. Amy's is the other one that expires the end of July, and so I was hoping that you could reappoint her for her next term. She is agreeable to serving another term on the Franklin Development Corporation Board if you would like for her to continue to do so.
I'll move for the appointment of Amy Richardson to the FDC board.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, that's finished.
Well, I was going to make a comment. I think that she has served very well in that capacity at this point, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay, is
That's
there-
my understanding.
Yeah, and I apologize for the late notice. Again, I thought it was the end of August and it ended up being July, and I didn't realize that till this past Friday. So I'll try to get you a better heads up next time that comes up.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Is there any other announcements, presentations, or public comment? Now hearing none, as we're passing the pictures down, Scott. The next one is a public hearing. It's old business.
Sir, we need to do the approval of minutes.
Oh, we missed that.
I would move to approve the minutes from July 1.
Seconded.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now we're to old business.
Move to read all old business by title only.
Second.
Motion is second to read all by title only. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This one is old business, item A, which is a public hearing. Common Council Budgetary Ordinance Number 19-11, an additional appropriation for additional parks projects, an amount of $100,000, Park Superintendent Chip Warner. I did not, yeah, there it is.
How could you miss Chip?
He's awful quiet.
Asking for money. You happy to answer any questions you have?
Could you explain again what it's for the public, and then last one, what the public hearing?
I can. So the $80,000, we'll start at the bottom because that's easier. The $80,000 includes $50,000 for the 180 South Jackson Street facility that we're getting ready to purchase from the Redevelopment Commission. It also includes some building improvements to that building, including electrical upgrades and lighting and plumbing. And we're going to install some garage doors. Right now it's got some double swinging doors and those kind of things. We talked about last time, just for people to know, that facility is actually going to be used as a maintenance facility for that new amphitheater project that's now. So this is kind of really the second thing. The first thing is the new parking lot. This is the second thing that's related to that project that's coming on in the next year or two. The other two have to do with, we're going to replace some air conditioning in the Wonder 5 Center. Well, that unit that's on the rooftop of that building needs to be replaced. It's actually out already, so the quicker we can get it in, the better. And then the remaining money is just some stuff we're going to do internally to that same 180 South Jackson Street. We're going to do some of that work with the park staff. So
And you're asking for those funds out of the Athens Rec Fund,
it's actually the park general
the
fund.
Park General
Yeah.
Fund, and those funds are, how is it generated?
It's actually from tax dollars, but it's also from money, the extra money that we make at the pool. We have a certain projection that we make for the pool every year. If we make above that, then that goes into our cash balance. We can use for other projects.
So I knew that, but the public sometimes gets confused in the parks budget. It's very complicated.
It's very complicated, that's correct.
All right, so is there anybody from the council has a question? If
Mayor, I might just point out, whether that amphitheater, it's our desire to build the amphitheater, but that might be sometime down the road, but I think there's a lot of other uses. It's going to be kind of a staging place for a lot of the equipment on the festivals and so forth too.
Correct.
Okay.
I think you'll start to see us use that as a staging area as quickly as maybe the fall festival this year.
I guess my point is, it's not necessarily for the amphitheater only, but there's a lot of other uses that building's gonna go for.
I agree.
Okay, so at this time, we will open it up for public hearing. So does anybody have any questions for Chip while he's here? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Any more questions from the council?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve common council budgetary ordinance number 1911.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hukin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Chip.
Can I add one more thing for 30 seconds?
That might change the vote.
I don't do a good enough job of this. We have an employee, Mike Blackwell, that is getting ready to retire after 34 years with the city. His last day is going to be August the 2nd. I thought I would recognize him. We're going to do that at the park board meeting on Thursday, but I don't usually see most of you guys there. So just to let you know, his last day is going to be August the 2nd.
Any chance somebody could send an email out?
Absolutely. We won't know. That would be awesome. We'd actually have somebody at the park board meeting. That'd be cool.
It is 4 o'clock Thursday.
4 o'clock.
I was hanging around the parks when he started working.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Mayor, I make a motion, move to read new business by title only.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ayers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, under new business, update on grant cycle, fundraise, volunteer opportunities, community partnership, and upcoming events, Franklin Education Connection, Tony Breeden.
Hi, hello. Yep, I'm Tony Breeden, the Executive Director of Franklin Education Connection, and as a part of our partnership with the city, just like to come and do quarterly updates, let you know what is going on with us as far as programs, initiatives, needs, and things like that. So we are getting ready to start a new school year, and with that becomes an opportunity for our teachers to apply for grants. We open up that cycle mid-September each school year and give them until around the end of October, so right at the fall break for them to submit those applications. Each year we get a higher caliber of applications. We continue to see a rise in the applicants coming through, so it makes the selection committee's job really difficult, but we like that. At the end of last school year, the total funds for grants that we had funded was $113,000, so excited about that, proud of that. And as far as grants that we funded in the past, it's everything from the arts to STEM programs, something as simple as morning tubs for a teacher to get her kiddos on focus in the mornings when they come in every morning. And then after school clubs as well, our partnership with Sylvan on the STEM clubs that are being offered to the students free of charge. And that was a partnership with the Brannigan Foundation. So continue to watch the grant cycle become more popular with our teachers, and I really enjoy seeing their passion projects come to life. So we're excited about the next cycle. And then moving on with that, also the beginning of each school year increases our need for volunteers. We have 2 mentor programs, Study Connections, which I know we have some study buddies in the room, and then also our First Scholar Mentor Program. The Study Connection program is a little bit more of a time commitment. Those mentors meet with the students once a week. And we have 2 ways that happens. It can be in the building that the student goes to school. It's immediately following school. Or we have some partnerships, the Franklin Police Department, the Armory, and NSK, where those students are bused off-site to meet with their study buddies. So we always welcome partnerships, but this year we are more in need for study buddies and mentors than we have been years previous. So it's exciting that we have more kiddos involved and interested in the programs, and we don't want to have to turn anyone away. The mentor program at the high school is a First Scholar Mentor Program, and that is less of a time commitment. That's 1 hour per month, and that is students who are on track to being the first in their family to attend college. So those mentors meet with those students once a month. The goal of the program tries to partner kiddos who have an interest in that career field. So a police officer with a student who wants to go be a police officer, or a nurse likewise. And sometimes we get that and sometimes we don't. But the goal of the program is to get them more on track with, okay, here's what I need to be applying for things, here's what I need to be paying attention to, instead of end of my senior year, beginning of my senior year, and I need to check all these boxes that I wasn't aware of. Also helps with career preparedness too. And they do some off-site college campus visits that the students have really enjoyed. So that's year 3. So the freshmen who entered at the beginning of the program when we first kicked it off are going to be coming in as juniors. So we're excited to see, once they become seniors, kind of compare the data and see who went to college and how that program made a difference. So both of those program opportunities, the applications are on our website. It's franklineducationconnection.org. If you know of anybody that has a passion for education, for helping students, we would love to have them become a part of our organization. And then as far as upcoming events, we are in the middle of planning our 4th annual Barn Dance. It's a fun event. It's the biggest fundraiser of the year. The city has partnered with us for, this will be the 2nd year, so we're very grateful for your continued partnership with that event. We have corporate sponsors that come in, and that's where a lot of our funds are generated, but it's also a wonderful event to buy tickets to, come attend. We get to hear testimonies from grant recipients. Last year, there was a ukulele club that was formed as a result of the grant, so 2 of the teachers came and played the ukuleles for us, which was pretty fantastic. And then we also get recipients or rather guest speakers for testimonials for Study Buddies and the First Scholars Program as well. So that event is Saturday, October the 5th at the barn at Crystal Spring Farm, which is a beautiful venue. They have partnered with us since the beginning of the event, and we're very grateful to them for that. So that is the upcoming event. And then lastly, we are super excited about launching our first ever FEC Campaign Week, and that will be within Franklin Community School Corporation. So we're taking that week, 2nd week of September, to do targeted messaging to Franklin Community School families, so kids can do Spirit Week participation at home. And then also within the Franklin school system, we've noticed that there are some people who, okay, I'm a study buddy, but I don't know what First Scholars is, I don't know about the grant process, so we're really trying to give a high-level view of what our organization does and how much we kind of help or assist the school corporation in all sorts of different ways. So we're really excited about that campaign. We have a lot of people helping in many different ways, so I'm very grateful to them for helping with that. And our goal is to see that campaign then become extended into local businesses. So, you know, you're a business that does like a payroll match or something like that. We have a lot of donors who donate to us that way individually. It would be wonderful to be able to launch a campaign in a business, local business that has education at the forefront of their causes. So that's something we're really excited about too. That's all I have. That's my update. If anybody has any questions, I welcome that. I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for all Franklin Education Connection does. You guys are an awesome organization.
Thank you to the city. We appreciate your partnership.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, next, Common Council Budgetary Resolution number 19-06, authorizing a transfer from record perpetuation services 300 to record perpetuation supplies 200 in amount of $5,000. City clerk, court clerk, Amy McLaughlin.
Yes, hi. Yeah, so this is money that we already have, and it's all in a 300 series. So we're just adding a 200 series so I can pay for my file cabinets that I just ordered for a new building. So that's the only change in that. And the file cabinets are only 3,000. We just put more in there because we're going to have other expenses that were coming up for the new building.
So the money is already appropriated, gentlemen, so if you're so inclined, you may pass this tonight, resolution.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Works. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Request approval of, next, number 3, request approval of City Council Ordinance number 19-02, authorizing the issuance of a not to exceed $27,500,000 aggregate principal amount economic development revenue refunding bonds for Audubon Homes, attorney Michael Dean, Dismore Law Firm, and attorney Rob Shaskall, EDC attorney.
That's a big number, gentlemen.
All zeros.
A lot of zeros.
I'm Rob Shopstall. I'm here wearing a couple hats. As you know, I'm the attorney for the Economic Development Commission. The proposal that the Franklin United Methodist Home and Otterbein are making started with that commission. So I've worked with Mike Dean, to my left, from the inception. This is the project you briefly heard about 2 weeks ago when we waived the conflict of interest for Mr. Dean to represent us as bond counsel. We didn't go into any detail, so if you don't remember, don't worry about it. We'll go through that tonight. What I'd like to do, and let me also say that with your city attorney's consent, I'm also representing you tonight for purposes of this transaction. I do not represent the Methodist Home. Let me say it again. I do not represent the Methodist Home or Otterbein. I'm here as your counsel. These two folks are the Methodist Home and Otterbein. It's Rob Newcomer is the CEO of the Methodist Home. Mike Dean's our bond counsel out of Cincinnati with Dinsmore and Scholl, LLP. I have a bit of a relationship with Methodist Home, though. It was my first job as a groundskeeper, and I mowed a lot of grass in the summer of 1985, I believe, and I still know where every outdoor air conditioning unit is, and I know how to hit it hard with a zero radius mower. Took off some siding on some of those cottages, too. There's probably, I think the statute of limitations is passed on that. So, some background, and if you have questions, let's stop and address them. After I say a few words, I'm going to let Mike give you some more detail. The big picture here is that the Methodist Home, as you know, is a retirement community, and it is a full-service shop. They have an Alzheimer's wing, and they can help you with just about anything you need as you age. When I got done mowing, the next time the Methodist Home came to Franklin to talk about help with borrowing money was in 1991. I've got a couple notes to just, 2 weeks ago I mentioned that we had done this before, and I think we've done this, I said it 3 times, it was more than that. So in 1991, the Methodist Home came to the city with this type of request, and it was granted. It happened again in 1999, similar request, it was granted. Happened again in 2007. Similar request, ordinance granted. Happened again in 2010, similar request, ordinance granted. And it happened again, the last time it happened was in 2015. So in each of those cases, what's happened is that the Methodist Home is seeking the city's help to get a tax-exempt borrowing status, which means that money will get borrowed, and the people that have loaned the money will receive their money back plus interest. Normally, the interest that they receive will be taxed to them as income, as interest income. And what's happening here is that if you agree to cooperate, as the city has done in the past, on those dates I mentioned, the Methodist Home and Otterbein's borrowing will also be tax exempt, which means that their new investors will not pay taxes on their interest. It allows Otterbein to borrow at a lower interest rate. Tax exempt interest rates are lower. It'll save them money. It's a better borrowing. In order to do that, they have to have a municipality cooperate, and we are essentially being asked to lend them our tax exempt status. And that's it. So we are not giving them any money. We're not being asked to give them any money. We're not being asked to guarantee any of their debt. We're not being asked to raise taxes, put any city property up. It's all going to be a conduit pass-through transaction. All the responsibilities are going to be on the Franklin United Methodist Home in Otterbein. It's a large transaction. The proposal is to allow that, let me back up. 2 weeks ago, Kenny asked me, Mr. Austin asked me if this was a refinancing of this 2015 debt, and I said yes, I was incorrect. So in 2018, Otterbein purchased the Franklin United Methodist Home. The Franklin United Methodist Home still exists. It's a limited liability company, I believe, non-profit corporation, and its sole owner is Otterbein. But it still exists as an entity. when Otterbein came in 2018 and made that purchase, it took out, it paid off essentially the 2015 city debt. It replaced it with private debt from Fifth Third. So currently Otterbein, frankly, United Methodist Home debt is all private debt through Fifth Third. So I wanted to correct that. I misspoke. The request today, though, is to take that debt public again with the issuance of this ordinance, which authorizes the bond issuance. It would be roughly $27 million refinancing plus the cost of the issuance costs. Folks who have to put the deal together are going to get paid. Otterbein and the Methodist Home has offered to pay your attorney's fees on this, and you're also entitled to, the city is entitled to a development fee. By my calculation, it maxes out at $10,000, and I think we'll be able to take that. It's not much, but it's something that you could then appropriate maybe back to the EDC or some other economic development purpose. As I mentioned, the proposal is coming from the Methodist Home, and the way they started it was to contact Krista. Krista, I think, correctly put them in touch with me as the counsel for the EDC, and I've been working with them since to get the documents together. As drafts have come out, I shared them with Lynn, and I've shared some with the mayor and with Krista and other folks. This is the current set. I just want you to see, your ordinance is very short, right? But when you have that many zeros in a transaction, a lot of words go on, and this appears to be white paper with black ink on it on each page. There are no extra words. Mike has done a really good job of efficiently writing this proposal and the loan agreement and all the bond purchase agreements. There's no extra words, but it takes that much paper to put all these words on a $27 million transaction. I've reviewed these and I am satisfied with what they say. I've sent them to Lynn, and I think she has I think she's is going to defer to me on the meat and potatoes of this, but if, of course, speak up as you want to. The basic flow here is that if you approve this ordinance tonight, the city will issue a bond, will borrow up to $27.5 million. And that is the city bond that's going to show up on Wall Street as a City of Franklin municipal bond. But it's not the debt, it's not a general obligation debt of the city. It's very clear in this paperwork for anybody who wants to read it, that the only right to repayment is from the operating revenues generated by the Methodist Home. There's going to be some mortgages granted from Otterbein properties in Ohio and also in Franklin.
Just 5 properties.
And there's to be some cost collateralization among the debtors, but the city of Franklin is only stepping in for its name and its taxes and purpose. In the Economic Development Commission meeting, we talked about it maybe as the risk here to the city is really more of a reputational risk, if any, because you will not be obligated to repay any of this money. So on the bond market, this will show up as a revenue bond, and the investors will know that it makes a good investment for them if the Methodist Home's revenues support it. So their financials are disclosed. There's a large public offering statement that's going to go out on the worldwide market. And anybody who wants to invest in this bond is going to be able to have a crack at it, and they'll be able to see that it's not something they can't expect to be repaid by the city. Also at the meeting, our clerk treasurer asked what kind of responsibility we're laying at her doorstep. And I think the good news is it's very little.
if approved, we'll have a closing period here over the next several weeks and months where there'll be some work for us to do. But going forward, all of our responsibilities are being assigned to a trustee, and we shouldn't see much, if any, of an ongoing obligation to do anything. I talked to Jeff Peters today and Nicole and confirmed that with them. I also went through the meat and potatoes with Jeff, and it didn't give him any heartburn. As you also know or recall, I've used Barnes and Thornburg, or the city has used Barnes and Thornburg in the past for a lot of its bond work. And specifically, I've reached out to Rick Hall, who's a partner with Barnes as their bond counsel. And I did that again on this job, and he sees nothing that gives him any heartburn either, and helped me understand some of the nuance of the transaction. The ordinance accepts as true what the Economic Development Commission did last week. And the Economic Development Commission had a public, you're not being asked to do a public hearing, by the way. So the Economic Development Commission had a public hearing. And at that time, it found that the statutory requirements for this type of proposal have been met. So that's done. I think I've told you probably as much as I should. Let me defer now to Mike, see if there's anything I need to need help describing. And then by all means, let's take the time, if we need to take the time to talk about it. One last point. You're familiar that general rule in Indiana is that an ordinance should not get passed on the night that it is introduced. That's, the state law says that. It also says, however, that that's not necessarily what has to happen. If the council approves, unanimously approves to consider it tonight, and then approves it with at least 5 out of 7 votes, it can all go tonight. It wouldn't have to come back next week. And Mike can talk to you about why that's important to them to make that request, that you do it all tonight. They have timing concerns on their side of the table that are worth hearing. So with that, let me stop talking and let Mike, yes.
Rob, before Mr. Dean, I would like to also give you background in terms of what the relationship between Rob and I has been, because I do wear a different hat looking at it from the council standpoint. Rob is absolutely accurate in terms of deferring to him in terms of the documents, although he shared all of those documents with me and I have reviewed all those documents. But since he is representing the city of Franklin in the transaction as it goes forward, quite frankly, it made no sense to me to have 2 sets of attorney's fees, even though they're going to be paying for them. They should be paying Rob rather than having the city pay anything that's in addition to that for my fees. So that's why we work that arrangement. I did have a frank conversation with Rob and asked him a couple of questions, and I think it's important that you know this because I'm sure there are questions that you had. My first question to him was, what are the risks? And and I know Jane and I talked about it too, because obviously, what's the catch is one of the things. What's the risk here? And my first question is, if this doesn't get paid back, is the city on the hook? And the answer unequivocally has been no. We don't have to pay the money back. We're not. Secondly, I asked him, and he followed up with Mr. Peters, is okay, even if we don't have to repay anything should they default, will that impair our ability to go issue a bond for something else? Similar to those privately, have we extended our credit to such a point that we could not then qualify for credit otherwise? And the answer again was no. And that's why we involved Mr. Peters to find out, you know, for some other reason, is this going to show up on our credit report and people will be able to get it? And Mr. Peters' response was, no, it will not. And then I said, to the question to Rob, I said, well then, what's the benefit? Why would we do this? And in addition to them paying the attorney's fees that are involved, the $10,000 approximately that the city would give to that is there any monetary benefit to us? And quite frankly, it's not. But the benefit to us is, are we supporting the economic development of an existing entity that has been here for all of those years, which includes the people that are employed, the services that it provides to our citizens. And so that really is why entities such as cities across the state do these kinds of transactions. And it's quite frankly why the legislature permits it to happen in that regard, because it is really an economic development tool. So those were the frank conversations that Rob and I had to make sure that we were covering all the bases when I read those documents. So I did look at those documents, but after concluding what I just said to you, I did indicate to Rob that I will then defer him, should you see fit to proceed with this, to let him go forward, because quite frankly, there's no sense in having two sets of lawyers to do the same thing over you, if you decide that's the direction.
So Mike Dean, Mike, you want to fill in any gaps that I've had?
Yes, so first of all, my name is Michael Dean. I'm from Densmore and Shoal in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're a law firm that serves as bond counsel to entities, 501c3 entities like Otter Vine. And it's a weird relationship when we go from bond counsel to Otter Vine, because you're our client. I won't go into the sort of boring details of what is the case, but it's a conflict of interest ethics rules requirement that the city be our client. I want to thank you for the thorough review and explanation. You made my job, I think, pretty easy. You've done a lot of the explanation. I will correct a couple of things, not correct, maybe clarify, that we just got new preliminary numbers from the underwriter for the bonds today. It looks like the principal amount will fall between 21 and 23 million, depending on how much we're supposed to. So it will be significantly lower than what's up there, the 27.5. Another thing, Rob mentioned that the rights of the city underneath the loan agreement would be assigned to a trustee. That is true except for the indemnification rights of the city. So the city will still be indemnified by Otter Vine's loans under the loan agreement, even though the city will not receive those loan payments. They will go directly to the trustee and then on to bondholders to be repaid. I will explain a little bit of the transaction structure for those that are interested in answering more questions that are any more detailed questions on the transaction. Yes.
Well, first of all, I'm favorable as far as, supporting this, but I presume since it's been in here a couple of times, this is a refinance of an existing bond issue?
It is a refinancing of an existing taxable loan. And this taxable loan, like Rob said, was taken out in 2018 to pay off the 2015 city bonds and also to add about $3 million in additional improvements to the facility.
Could you specify what those improvements are?
I believe it was improvements to cottages and patios on those cottages. I'm not getting more detail.
Just general cottage.
It was a lot of just upkeep and deferred maintenance and stuff that was done.
Okay, the reason I ask that is if it's like an economic development type of thing, I'd be kind of just curious as far as what, because I think the original loan might have gone into some additional facilities, I think at one point, maybe going back a few years on this thing, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they were going to do any additions or anything.
Not this time. I know that going back all the way to 1991, all those transactions that Rob specified were a mix of refunding of prior debt and new money. So there's been continual new investment over the last 28 years into this facility, and surely before that, and well before me. But no, at this time, it is all purely refunding.
And is all this money going to be spent here, or is it any of it going to be spent in Ohio or wherever?
There is a separate component of the transactions taking place in Ohio, which got the similar dollar amount. There's 2 facilities over there that are being refinanced as well. This is all a pure refinancing. So this piece of the transaction will be used only here in Franklin. Those pieces will be used in Ohio. And the reason for that is frankly, interest rates are just really low. And it's just a really good opportunity to refinance a lot of this debt.
If we go from taxable bank debt to non-taxable bond issue, you're probably not, certainly I understand the statements.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and these will be fixed rate as well. The outstanding transactions are all variable rate.
Then the waiving of the next hearing, does that require all the council to be present, or just the unanimous consent of those that are present?
No, since this is not a zoning ordinance, which has to have 2 hearings, other ordinances can be waived. And how that is done under 36.4.113, I believe, is you need unanimous consent of all members present because you have a quorum. if you unanimously agree that you may vote on it at this meeting, then we can then go to the vote. And I would disagree with Rob just a bit. It requires a 2/3 vote of the entire elected officials, which means 4.66 of you must approve. So I think you rounded up to 5 of us then approve it at that point in time.
So 5 of the 6 that are here would have to then.
That is correct. So you could be two motions. Number one, we shall vote on it, which all of you must approve tonight. And then second, we require 5 of the 6 to approve the ordinance.
One of the questions was, he mentioned was a urgency of time.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on what the urgency is to pass it all in one session?
I can, yeah, and a little bit goes back to what I just said about interest rates and interest rate risk with waiting for another 2 weeks or a month. But we have, as in any of these deals, we have financing schedules that people like to stick to. And there's an Ohio piece, so there's a lot of moving parts in this transaction. Rob's been very helpful out here to help set this one up and get us moving out here. We originally had a schedule to print the offering document, which will go out to investors, and that's the document they'll read and decide if they want to invest in the bond, which requires city approval, to be printed a little bit earlier. And then we looked at meeting dates, and that was just not feasible with the meeting dates we looked at here in Franklin. And so we actually have it set up to print tomorrow, along with the Ohio component of the transaction. We're trying to push all this along at the same time, so it all closes on the same day, it all sells on the same day, and ultimately it'll be one issue for tax purposes, which makes a difference for us at bond council, the tax exempt status. But generally it is just a pure scheduling thing where they would like to print this tomorrow and keep everything moving at the same time. So I apologize for the sort of late notice on this, but it was the earliest with the monthly commission meeting, and then to try to follow up here as quickly as possible as the earliest.
I assume that's in anticipation of the Fed dropping interest.
Well, the drop might help us, honestly. Yeah, not something that we count on. We don't like to play games with any of that stuff. It happens outside of us. And we don't talk, we're not dealing with investors or market people, and that's on the underwriter's job, which in this case is Fifth Third Securities, affiliate of Fifth Third Bank. And so they have a good year on the market. We just got those new numbers today. It shows an interest rate of between 2% and 3% on 30. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Otterbein and Matthew Summers in my district, they're a great community partner and a great employer of people in the city, and they do great things for their residents. I would move the council to waive the 2 hearing rule and move forward this evening.
Second by Mr. Austin.
Can you do a roll call vote, sir, because it has to be unanimous?
Okay, so Madam Clerk Treasurer, can we do a roll call?
This is just to get through here.
Go ahead.
Mr. Austin,
Yay.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yay.
Mr. Eggers,
Yay.
Mr. Houston,
Yay.
Mr. Richards,
Yay.
Mr. Wertz.
Yay.
So all that does is, we're going to consider it tonight, so I think Mr. Duke and some other people may have some questions about what we're considering.
And I would like to hear if anybody
That's what I was just
audience wants to say.
I was just going to ask, I know it's not required for a public hearing, but I would like to open it up for a public hearing if anybody has questions or comment. Seems like you must have done a good job explaining it.
Might have put it this way.
All right, so public hearing is closed.
So, Dan, I know you talked earlier about, the catastrophic side of things. Earthquake happens, Otterbein totally destroyed, Walmart or Wall Street crashes, things that we cannot control concerning Mother Nature and or the stock market as far as it's concerned. And then there's no liability on the city whatsoever to repay this.
That I've been reassured that's how I read it. I've been reassured that by Mr. Shastall. I believe he consulted with Rick Paul, who has no relationship to this, but has in fact done bond work for us. That's the way he reads it. As Rob perfectly said, I think the only downside to that would be reputational, because
Sure.
under that theory, there was a bond that didn't get repaid. But in terms of, will our taxpayers have to reach into our coffers to pay that debt? The answer is no.
I've been on council for a while now, and I think I've seen 4 or 5 of these requests, and Mr. Shastal has not misled us up to this point. I know, Lynn, you've reviewed the documents, and I know these are refinancing tools that are being used on the economic development side of things, which in some capacities over my head. I understand it, but it is still very difficult. It's a big pill to swallow. So I lean on the professionals that are here to protect me. And then on the ED side, that's Rob, and on the city side, that's Lynn. Rob being the dual guy representing on both sides. I see. Correct. Yes. So,
And technically, as you know, Mr. Austin, also Venus representing us as the bond.
I understand.
So,
I get that as well.
Yeah, and all of us have, when you say over our head, I think that collectively it's been an interesting, absolutely, it is a team to review these kinds of transactions.
And I'm comfortable with the professional help and support that we receive, as a councilor. So, I worry about things like that, the catastrophic, the earthquakes, the terrorist attacks, the, floods, tornadoes, things like that. Our bond's gone tomorrow, then what? I mean, God forbid, that's a lot of, family members that we're going to be putting in the ground earlier than they thought. God forbid. But, those type of things, concern me. And I think it needs to be asked.
The thing that would concern me, in addition, is, something that could always go wrong, you think of that in every transaction, and I have a high comfort level with Rob working, because he's worked with us on the RDC stuff, and you say Rick Hall's involved as well.
I basically asked him for a second opinion.
Okay.
I just met Mike.
Okay.
I thought it made sense.
Okay. Well, somewhere in this document, it's going to state the city has no liability.
It's repeated throughout,
Consistent.
in bold black letters.
And concerning the document putting tonight, the ordinance, section 11, in all caps, very clear.
Well, I been in situations where you thought a document said something, and then it comes back that, well, it really didn't, but again, I have high confidence in just the folks I know that I work with, so that.
And Bob, I'm glad you asked, Mr. Dugan, I'm glad you asked that question, because it segues into what Ken said. Because after Rob and I had the conversation, that's why we sought Rick's opinion too. So it has been a collective, are we all, and that would be the fourth lawyer that has said the same thing, so it can't possibly be right? But there were 4 independent lawyers that looked at it and assured us of that, in addition to Mr. Peters.
Well, I'm comfortable with Rob's side saying it, but more the better. That's fine, so.
We have a good relationship with Barnes, and a lot of respect for Barnes and Thornburg as well. We've worked with Tom Fitton and Rick Hall, a few others there, so we respect that for a lot as well.
Big, bold, black letters.
It is.
Not bolded, we bolded for you.
No, I probably never said it, but I know those documents are extensive. Are you needing a motion for approval?
Is there any other questions? If not, this what we'll do.
I would approve the, I guess we're approving the ordinance then?
That's correct, passing the ordinance as presented. And again, Madam Clerk Treasurer, would you do a roll call vote, because we do need to have at least 5 of the 6.
Okay, so did you finish my motion for me then?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. I'll move for the approval of City Council ordinance. Thank you for your help on that. 2019-02.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Oh, wait, sorry. Ms. Rhodes, will you make a roll call, please? We don't do that too often.
Mr. Austin,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Eggers,
Yay.
Mr. Buchan,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. Woods.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, motion approved. Thank you. Okay, that gets us to council member comments.
Excuse me, just
Yes,
a
ma'am.
moment. Should there, in the motion, should it have been noted that it was signed by the council president in Revere?
Is that the only thing that's on the ordinance? I did not.
It is.
Okay. Mr. Shaftsall?
Yes.
Do you need a motion to approve the council president and the mayor to sign on behalf of the council?
That is the only signature.
That's the only signature you've got.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Eggers.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wertz. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Austin, council comments.
Looks like I'm going to be signing my life away tonight. Wow, that's a big number. Can't retire in 10 years. No, I've been gone for a week. Appreciate, I know the Economic Development Commission that it's weird, you know, when I leave the country and big things happen. And unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Economic Development Commission meeting. I do apologize for that, but when you're overseas, it's hard to do both. So apologize for that. Other than that, it seems that the phase 9, the tail end of the meeting tonight, where it works, and phase 9 is being paid finally. And so it's going to be really nice to get those projects finished. Holy cow. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Mr. Buchanan.
I was president of the redevelopment commission meeting, I believe it was Trent Newport, when they introduced that they were going to take the stoplight out at Home Avenue and Jefferson Street. And I think the spirit of that was, we're going to take the light out. But I don't know that he came out and said this, but the feeling that I got that if it becomes a problem, you know, something that can be looked at some point in the future. I will say that on 2 occasions, I've actually been driving west on that. I've stopped at a light that's not there. But I can't explain that. But I stood there and I just parked there and somebody was behind me. I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's really no light there, so I had to take off. But I have been traveling south on Home Avenue and stopped. And it's kind of a dash. You got to punch that thing to get across because you don't know what's lurking back there around that corner. But I'm just throwing that in.
That's good, I like to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Woods.
There'll be an RDC meeting in the morning at 8 a.m.
Thank you to all our city employees for the 4th of July Firecracker Festival. It was awesome. There's all kinds of people. Went off without a hitch, I believe. It was great. I'll be shaking lemon shake-ups at Gateway 10 here in about 20 minutes. 2 minutes thirsty.
In that suit?
No, I won't change clothes. I might sweat a little too much, but I will listen.
Mr. Williams.
So I'd just like to get the structure of some lemonade.
Mr. Rhodes, at this time, sir. Ms. Rhodes.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I do have one thing I just would note, in future considerations of that stoplight or the lack thereof, remember we'll have to incorporate NDOT because that's still their road. And even though we have jurisdiction over it, we have to get approval from, because that's how they engineered it. I'm sure we can and go back and look. It may be something that we have to include with them because that was part of the design process when we got NDOT approval. So just throw it out there. If we're going to make some changes, we have to include them along with it.
And a lot of times what happens, that I've been told with the NDOT project like that, is after it's all turned over to us, after the project's over, then we can go back and do some stuff. But until it's turned over, they really don't allow you to do that. So we'll see where that goes, and we will get with Board of Works and get with Mark Richards and see what that process is. So I didn't know that you had sent that in, and I see you guys, and you didn't tell me that. So I was kind of surprised. Okay, I had one of Bob Hugin's moments, I don't remember that. So,
It's fun. We're getting there. It's
all
fun.
right, thank you.
Mayor, I got one more thing.
Okay.
Since Rob's back here, I thought you left, but in 1974, I was cutting grass at the Methodist home at that point, and you think banging into a air handler might be a problem. I ran over a patch, what I thought was a patch of weeds, and Mrs. Thompson come flying out of her house and said, "What did you do to my raspberry patch?" And they were gone. Not that high.
We'll end on a good note now, right? So need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rick. All those in favor?